If you're planning to go into a bulking phase in the gym and put your calories into a surplus with the aim of building as much muscle as possible, did you know there's actually a lot of benefits to going into a calorie deficit and getting lean before you consider a bulking phase? And these reasons stem from everything from health to physical muscle building results and also psychological factors. In this video, I'm going to explain the 5 most important reasons why you should definitely get lean before going into a bulking phase, and then present you with a roadmap and some real life examples taken from my clients. If you're new here, I'm Ryan Lewin. I'm an online body and health transformation coach, and I've been working full-time in the industry for 10 years. Before that, I went to university, I did a master's degree in exercise physiology, and I'm a certified nutritionist. So if you hit subscribe, you can stay up to date with all the content that I put out that I promise is going to help you with your own body and health transformation journey. Okay, so what do I actually mean by get lean before going into a bulking phase? For guys, this could be anywhere between, say, 9 and 12% body fat. And for women, it might be more 15 to 20% body fat. If you currently carry quite a bit more body fat than that, then I would strongly recommend going into a calorie deficit and dieting down first before you consider going into a bulking phase. And here's why. So the first reason is to do with insulin sensitivity and something that we call nutrient partitioning. Now, basically, what this means is when you're in a leaner start point, you have less chance of a slight calorie surplus being used to store body fat and more chance of a calorie surplus being used to build muscle. You're also in a better position to actually utilize the amino acids that you're providing, so the protein that you're eating in order to build muscle. Now, when you're starting from a leaner set point, you're also going to have improved insulin sensitivity. And what this means is your muscles are going to be better placed to actually pull in the carbohydrates that you consume and store them as glycogen, which means you're going to have better workouts. Your training performance is going to be improved. Your energy systems are going to be running much more efficiently. Now, if you're training more productively in the gym, that means you're going to be giving your muscles more of a stimulus. You're going to find it easier to progressively overload. And because you've got better insulin sensitivity, your muscles are also going to be better placed to actually pulling in and using the protein that you consume in the diet to support repair and recovery. So if you combine those two factors, being leaner and having better insulin sensitivity is obviously going to improve muscle gains because you perform better and recover better. And also, insulin is anabolic. So the better your insulin sensitivity, the better you're going to be able to utilize the anabolic effects of that hormone. Okay, the second reason is reduced systemic inflammation. So when you're carrying more body fat, you will have higher levels of inflammation, and that's because body fat is actually inflammatory. Now, inflammation in the body hinders muscle protein synthesis. So if we look at the biological pathways that take place when we're looking to build muscle, there is a downregulation of the effectiveness of those pathways when we've got higher levels of inflammation. So again, it just means that if you bring body fat down to a healthier place before you go into a gaining phase, your muscle building processes are going to be much quicker and much more efficient, leading to better long-term outcomes with your muscle building efforts. And also, let's be honest, you're probably not just doing this to look good. You've probably got a health conscious brain on your shoulders, which means you probably care about how all this is going to affect you in years to come. Now, low-level kind of chronic systemic inflammation has been linked to, all kinds of cancers, cardiovascular issues, metabolic issues. So reducing inflammation is always going to be a good thing, not just to support muscle building, but also to support your health. And that is another reason why getting leaner before going into a calorie surplus is going to be beneficial. Okay, number 3. Getting leaner before a gaining phase gives you a bigger runway to play with. If you're going into a small calorie surplus with the aim of building muscle, you're inevitably going to gradually gain a little bit of body fat over time. And if you're starting that process from a leaner set point, it basically means that you're not going to put yourself into an unhealthy position and run into issues with the previous points that I just discussed quite as quickly. If you start a muscle building phase from, say, 15 to 17%, as soon as you've put a couple of percent of body fat on, you're actually back to 20%. And we know that's not going to be optimal from a health perspective, or, as we've just discussed, a muscle building perspective. Whereas if you start your gaining phase from, say, 10% body fat, 12% body fat, if you do gain a few percentages on body fat levels, you're still going to be in a pretty good place, both from a physique perspective and a health perspective. And that essentially means that you're going to be able to go for longer in that muscle building phase before you need to go into a mini cut or a full-blown fat loss phase. The longer you're in that calorie surplus, the more muscle you're going to build. Now, number 4 comes down to the psychological components of this. So I'm imagining if you're someone that wants to go through bulking phases, dieting phases, you might be doing it purely for health reasons, but I imagine there is probably an aesthetic reason for it as well. If you go into a bulking phase at a point where you're just about happy with your body fat levels, or maybe even still a little bit uncomfortable, then as soon as you start to feel like you're gaining a little bit of body fat from that calorie surplus, you'll probably want to stop it because you won't be happy, you won't feel comfortable. And then you'll probably want to go back into a fat loss phase. And this is where you can end up just yo-yoing between the two and never really getting anywhere with either of them. And then number 5 is being able to actually see your progress. So if you start a muscle building phase from a leaner start point, it's going to be more motivating for you because you're actually going to be able to see some of the muscle growth that's going on, because you can see, the outline between your shoulders and your biceps, or, your abs or whatever. Like, you're going to be able to see your physique changing more clearly than if you were carrying body fat and the body fat was covering those gains. And it also makes progress assessment a lot easier as well. So there we go. There's the 5 reasons why going into a dieting phase and getting leaner before you consider a calorie surplus and a bulking phase is going to be beneficial from a health, performance, physique, and psychological perspective. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop a few examples up here and just talk you through some of the processes that I've been through personally, and also a couple of my clients that have been through this kind of journey. So this is me after my photo shoots in 2021. Now, I know that 2022, the 12 months that followed those photo shoots, was some of my best ever for training, because I'd put my calories up from a leaner set point, which means I was experiencing all the benefits that I've just mentioned, and I had a really productive 12 months of building muscle. Likewise, June 2025, so 10 months ago from when this video is recorded, I did another photo shoot where I dieted down and saw some of the new muscle that I'd built. And again, the 6 months that followed that, up until now, I've not been in a diet. I've been in a calorie surplus or around maintenance for periods of time. And my training has been great. I'm fitter than I've ever been. I'm definitely stronger than I've ever been on a lot of muscle groups. And I can feel my shape changing even further because I put my calories up from that point. Now, I've definitely, before I got into all this as a study and a profession, many years ago when I was at university, sort of 2021, I definitely made the mistake of going into a bulking phase to get big whilst carrying far too much body fat. And it was uncomfortable. And a lot of the things that I've mentioned in this video, yes, they are research-based, but they're also just coming from my own experiences as well, where I would go up to 3,500 calories a day, whilst also definitely carrying too much body fat, drinking too much as a uni student and having hangover days. Like, I was not in good shape. And it just made me feel awful. And then every 2 seconds I was like, I don't like looking like this. I want to get leaner. I want to go into a deficit. So I've definitely been there, and I've experienced the drawbacks of going into a gaining phase or a bulking phase when it's not the appropriate time to do so. And I've definitely also experienced going into a calorie surplus off the back of getting leaner and felt completely different about it. Okay, now I'm just going to show you a few examples of my clients who have been through the process of getting leaner, building muscle, and then dieting down again after they've been through the gaining phase. So here we've got Ben. So the first thing that me and Ben did was we did a photo shoot prep. So he got ridiculously lean, as you can see in the pictures, removed all the body fat that he was carrying. But he still said that, he wanted to build a little bit more size. He still felt quite small. So we then went through a 12-month muscle building phase. Now, because he'd got so lean for the photo shoot, we were able to do 12 months in a steady calorie surplus without any mini cuts. It was just 12 months of gaining. I think at the end of that gaining phase, he was about 12, 13 kilos heavier than where he was at the photo shoot. Obviously, he'd accumulated a little bit more body fat. So then we did a second photo shoot prep after that 12-month gaining phase. And as you can see here, he's definitely holding more size, more muscle, and he came in at about 5-6 kilos heavier than his first photo shoot. So between the two shoots, there was a 5 or 6 kilo difference. Okay, then we've got John. So John is also someone who went through that process. The first thing that we did was, because he started with a higher body fat level, we went through, I think it was an 8-month fat loss phase, finished with a photo shoot where he got down to maybe, 15% body fat, something like that. But then we actually did go into a gaining phase. Now, this was one where we didn't go too aggressive with the gaining because we weren't quite at that sort of 10 to 12% body fat. But we still, we were sensible with the calorie increases, and he did manage to build a really decent amount of muscle. And then again, he dieted down for a second photo shoot, and that was the end result. And then lastly, we've got Danny. So exactly the same. First thing that we did was diet him down for a photo shoot where he went from this to this. That was around 7 months. And then he went into a 12-month muscle building phase and he built a lot of muscle tissue. We then dieted him down for his second photo shoot, and between the two photo shoots, which were just a year and a half apart, so it was about 18 months between the two photo shoots, there was a 7 kilo difference between that and that. So obviously built a lot of muscle, and you can see it in the pictures as well. Now, all three of those examples that I just showed you wouldn't have built as much muscle as they did had they not gone through that process of getting leaner first, because of all the reasons that I've mentioned in this video. They definitely wouldn't have been as healthy by the end of it, and they definitely wouldn't have built as much muscle. So there we go. There are my examples and my client examples of why you should follow the advice in this video and get leaner before you consider a bulking phase. Now, for those of you that are sitting there thinking, well, I'm carrying quite a lot of body fat around my middle, but I've also got skinny arms and I'd like to build muscle. I don't really like the idea of dieting and getting leaner. The good news is, in your first fat loss phase, when you go through that first 6, 7, 8 months of calorie deficits to get leaner, you will still build muscle, providing you get a few things right. And luckily for you, I have done another video on how to build muscle and lose fat at the same time whilst going through that initial recomposition phase. So if you are sat there thinking you want to get bigger, but you also want to get leaner and you're not sure which direction to go, this video is for you. Go and watch it. I promise it will help. Now, thank you again for listening if you've made it this far. Once again, please do subscribe to the channel. It helps me help more people, but also it helps me help you with your journey. So make sure you subscribe. If you want to check me out on Instagram, it's @InShapeWithRyan. And if you would like to listen to my podcast, it is In Shape Radio on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. And if you ever wanted to reach out to me directly to ask any questions or learn more about how my coaching services work, you can either send me a DM on Instagram @InShapeWithRyan, or you can send me an email, ryan@inshapenutrition.co.uk, and I'll gladly provide you with some answers and some information. Thanks again for listening. I'll catch you next time.